please rise in body or spirit and sing our gathering song, number 83 in the gray hymnal, Winds Be Still. Unitarian Universalist writer and teacher Richard Kimball of Maine wrote these words for a Methodist composer, Samuel Wesley's hymn, Lead Me, Lord.
Good morning. Welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her, and we're so glad to have you here today. We are really grateful that you have taken some time to be with us this morning, and this is a very exciting day, so there's much you can do after the service before you even leave this space, so we're grateful to have you. If you are visiting us for the first time, we invite you after the service to join us in the hall and fill out a visitor's card, which is how we can be in touch with you about all the other things that happen here. And we also invite those who are ready to make the commitments of membership to mark their calendar for the first Sunday in November, which will be our next membership joining Sunday for those who are ready to make the commitments of membership. And we have today the first of our youth lunches. These lunches will support our youth who are planning to go to General Assembly. And we have 11 youth that want to go to General Assembly. So we're going to need a lot of support. So we could be more enthusiastic about that. Let's wake up. You all have no idea what a gift that is. And we also, if you can support us by staying for lunch or making a contribution, that's great. And if you'd like to join us if you'd like to talk to Marina about helping with future lunches, we're going to be doing quite a few more of these before the end of the year. Do that. That's another way to help. Another way we can support our amazing children and youth is that we are having Trunk or Treat on the next week, and we have a paucity of trunks. And I know we can do better with our trunks. So I think we have like one confirmed trunk. That is not okay. So if you can help with a trunk, please see Marina after the service, or just email her, actually. She may be running around, and let her know that you can help with that. Also, after the service today, you can see the Justice Table to help write notes for the Trinity Center breakfast bags. And our Faith in Action partner is asking you to sign a form that you will vote. They also are asking for your positions on Props 5 and 36, which they feel are essential to the needs of Black and brown people and poor people in our communities. But these positions that are the same as those of the League of Women Voters and the UU Justice Ministry. But if you're not comfortable with that, if you'll just sign it saying you're going to vote, they are very concerned that people are going to stay away from the polls, and they want us to remember there is more at stake than the top of the ticket. So please pledge to vote. So you can do that at the table near the door for the Borton Hall. And we can help our neighbors. And welcome to this beloved community.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Oswald, a member of your Board of Trustees. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to our service. We begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. We're glad to see all of you. A special welcome for our children and families, a fidget table for kids, and a comfort room with sound for those visiting with the littlest ones. If you are with us in person, feel free to join us in Borton Hall after service to meet old friends and to meet someone new. If you're joining us online, you can meet people in the virtual coffee hour via Zoom. Please remember, the way to make connections here is to connect on Sunday and beyond. Our weekly email and Beacon newsletter are good ways to track the many, many ways to gather and connect here, as our pictures at the beginning of the service showed. Finally, have you made your bid for love donations yet? Have you saved the date? It's going to be fun. Your hardworking board is going to contribute, and you can too. Need some ideas? Talk to the team or see the recent emails. There's a table in Borton Hall, which you can visit after the service. Bid for Love is shaping up to be a really fun event, so mark your calendars for November 9th, 6 p.m., or actually earlier. 5 p.m., yes. Welcome. It's good to be together.
Okay, so we are, you can put that slide back up for just a second. I have to explain that. We are talking about vulnerability today. So I just want us to look around for a moment and just be grateful that we have a place, or if you're new, that you're willing to explore a place where you might be able to be in community with others in this time when many of us feel vulnerable. And I want to commend each of you for being here for a topic that maybe you thought, I don't know if I want to come for that. So you all get to then give each other exchange greetings of unusual gusto today to give us fortitude.
just as you are without changing a thing. Sing it with me. Just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in just as you are. Just as you are. Let's sing it all together. Just as you are without changing a thing. Just as you are, I accept you. I see you, I hear you, I welcome you in just as you are. Just as you are.
Hello. My name is Chris. They, them. It's my first one, so. We face a challenge to democracy, a challenge that calls us to hope in moments of despair, a challenge that asks us to persist in the faith that we can and must make a difference. May our flaming chalice recommit us to truth in our words and our actions, that we may live as we believe people should live.
We should appreciate our tech team. They have to deal with me. Thank you, tech team. Yes, we should really appreciate them, especially today. All right. This is my friend, Scribble. And Marina, Scribble has a question, but Scribble's feeling a little shy, so asked me to ask you about this. Why did you sing that song when we're coming back together after the greetings?
Well, that is a good question, Scribble. I want to help our community learn the things that our children are learning in our spiritual exploration program.
And Scribble also wants to ask you if you can help, because Scribble's feeling all mixed up inside. There's so much going on and everything right now. Scribble feels a little overwhelmed.
Well, Scribble, I think you probably have lots of emotions in your body, and actually our RE classes are studying those emotions, and I brought some of my other friends. Can I have a couple of volunteers to come grab some? Oh, thanks, Ari. Great. Will you hold up the blue one? This is sadness, and our gray one, will you hold that one up, Sarah? That is anxiety. And then, Addie, will you hold up our red one? This is anger. Kind of relevant when we're talking about vulnerability.
So you're saying that Scribble is asking that the children are getting prepared to have emotional superpowers, and so Scribble wants to know why you're telling the rest of us. Is it so we'll be jealous?
I have a question for you. For you, Reverend Leslie.
Oh.
Is it really Scribble that's asking these questions?
Of course. But I might be interested in the answers too. So Scribble wants to know, are you just studying these angry emotions, or are you studying any others?
We're also studying happiness and confidence and peace and love. And then we're going to get into more complex emotions after that.
So I guess what I would say, and I'm sure Scribble agrees with me, is that we could learn a lot from all of you about how to be in better relationship with all of our mixed up emotions in these times. So what do you think?
Yeah, thank you for helping us confront all of our big feelings. And we're going to continue throughout this year learning about more of those feelings. But right now, I want to invite you all to sing us all to our activities.
Good morning. My name is Casey Gardner. My pronouns are she and her, and they and them. So anyone who knows me well knows that I am a huge Brené Brown fan. If you aren't aware of who she is, she's a psychologist, sociologist, storyteller, author, and what she in her own words calls a shame researcher. Her work can be called self-help in many ways, because it comments on human behavior, but behind it is deep science, which honestly I think makes her one of the most non-you people in my mind. I first discovered her, as most people do, through her widely popular TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability. Now I could talk about her for hours, but instead of doing that, I'm going to tell you why I hold such a high opinion, because I think that is going to be a good exercise in being vulnerable. So I'm going to tell you a story. In 2017, I moved from the Bay Area to Santa Cruz to go to graduate school. I was about 1 month out of an extremely damaging and traumatic period in my life, which actually left scars that remain to this day. I separated myself physically and emotionally from many of the people and spaces I frequented in this time, which meant committing to starting my life over. I realized that parts of me were far too out in the open. I was regularly allowing my feelings and experiences to be constantly appraised by others. I had trusted too much and too many, and I needed to go inward for a while. As guidance through that time, I downloaded an audio copy of Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, a quest for true belonging and the courage to stand alone. Essentially, it was a guide for those who needed to rebuild themselves by setting healthy boundaries and creating safeguards in attempts to foster more conscious connections with others. I cried in my car so much over that book, realizing how much of my life I had spent giving my power over to the wrong people. Being open and authentic to the degree that I got hurt over and over again. It was a wake-up call, knowing I was leaving myself vulnerable to those who might take advantage, and it was a necessary step on my journey to realizing that trust does have to be earned. However, there was still something very important missing from my narrative about vulnerability and it being the root of all of my struggles. As part of my graduate program, and maybe somewhat as a byproduct of all of my self-work, I decided to write my thesis on the role of empathy in education. Against popular opinion, I thought it might actually be able to teach empathy, and in turn, put fewer hurt people who hurt people into the world. In this research, I was introduced to some trailblazing researchers like Carol Dweck, Suzanne Keene, and David Kidd. I also read almost all of Brené Brown's books. However, unlike Braving the Wilderness, most of her work seemed to put the idea of vulnerability on a huge pedestal. In the wake of all of my newfound boundaries, I was reading about how the actual solution to most problems is unapologetically opening up. And that made me feel scared. I thought, what if I let my truth fall into the wrong hands again? I didn't want that. I was healing. I wanted to stay healed. Here's a summary of what Brown says about vulnerability. It is a heroic act. It is wandering into a cave with no flashlight, jumping off a cliff without seeing the bottom. There is no promise of reward, but only by accepting the potential pain of being hurt can we also open ourselves up to the joys of being connected. And conversely, if we are unable to ever take that leap, our stories remain untold, and our authentic selves become clouded with shame. We actually risk more damage by being closed off, not from the outside, but from within. To this day, I see it everywhere. People who are miserable because they are too afraid to be vulnerable. They have to be safe and protected more than they desire to involve themselves in an open exchange of their humanity. By doing so, they feel safe, and emotionally, they are isolated. I know intimately how rooted in trauma this mindset usually is. Some of us have been irreparably damaged by those we have been vulnerable with. In fact, some people, if you give them your whole self, they will gladly take all of you. For much of my life, I have been so pathologically exposed as a person, which means I have found the sharp edges of my trust too often. But for those of you who might feel that vulnerability is synonymous with danger, I need you to hear this, because I needed to hear this. You weren't hurt because you made yourself vulnerable. You were hurt because someone didn't know how to. Vulnerability isn't what creates the damage, it's the lack of it. Some people are sadly not ready for or capable of vulnerability. But I don't think that that's most people. In fact, I think people don't just want, they need to authentically connect. They need to see themselves reflected honestly in others, to not feel alone in being imperfect or afraid or insecure or overjoyed or marginalized or wounded. And we can't give that to or receive it from anyone if we don't embrace what some might call a leap of faith, or what Brené Brown calls the courage to be vulnerable. Lately, my way of practicing this has been showing people the places where it hurts, allowing myself to not have to hide what isn't perfect, to turn the healing process outwards, to hold myself accountable in much more visible ways, or to just monologue on social media when I'm feeling lonely. Oddly enough, I've kept many great people in my life this way. In fact, my friends often tell me that one of the things they like about me most is how vulnerable I am and how it makes them feel seen. I think I'd be losing something by throwing that away. Because what I've learned is that vulnerability doesn't just mean letting other people in. It means letting yourself out. Being an example of this humble, messy courage that we all want to see in the world. So in the spirit of being vulnerable, I'm gonna say 3 final things. 1, go buy one of Brené Brown's books. Seriously, I need to have more people in my life that I can talk to about the interconnectivity between neuroscience and justice work, because this is actually my idea of a good time. 2, authenticity and trust are terrifying. And most days that I open myself up to others, I am very aware of the risk I take. 3, my life would never be as beautiful as it is without every single time I have made the conscious choice to be my most authentic, unapologetic self and invite those around me to do the same. So come, let us bring our whole selves here in a brave and necessary act of being vulnerable together.
Please rise in body or spirit and join us in hymn 1007 from the Teal hymnal, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. Gospel musician and Cincinnati UU choir director Kenny Smith arranged this hymn by Rose Sanders, a contemporary advocate for abused children and the first African-American female judge in the state of Alabama.
This is the time that we take into our hearts those joys and sorrows of this collected community that are too great to hold alone. And I am asking Casey to light our first candle this morning. Our beloved member, Elsie Mills, has written to let us know that she has been diagnosed with AML, leukemia. And Elsie is at John Muir, Walnut Creek, and will be there for a month, and then can probably go home and continue outpatient chemo. Her daughter and son-in-law and grandkids are nearby, and Rodney and I are going to visit her. She has to limit that, as you can imagine. But she appreciates your healing thoughts, blessings, and prayers, and cards and notes can be sent to Elsie via the mail slot on the SCAF building, because we'll be delivering them on a regular basis. Let us all send healing energy towards Elsie. Tom Taylor is lighting a candle this morning. He writes, I just came back from visiting my ex who is dying of alcohol-induced dementia. It was devastating. Blessings for her and for my daughter. And our thoughts are with your family, Tom. Laura Ransom is lighting a candle this morning in memory of a close family friend from childhood, Kitty Finkelpearl, who was memorialized in my hometown yesterday. She was 96. My sister represented our family. And I ask, and Jan is lighting a candle of joy to commemorate the marriage of Travis McPhee and his beloved partner Jenny, which is taking place this weekend. And I will say this, I know that Travis appreciates our community, and some of you know is still working with us on our Faith Without Walls and our meditation programs. And Travis also appreciates boundaries. So if you'd like to send greetings to Travis, I also suggest cards via the church. Thank you. And Jenny, Travis and Jenny. But we are excited about that. It's a wonderful thing. I am inviting Casey to light 2 candles of joy. This is from our caring committee. They are announcing that Doug Schuster and Tony Newey are celebrating their 90-plus birthdays this month. Doug will be turning 93 on October 21st, and Tony on 90 on October 26th. I want to add, let's light another candle because I happen to know that Alan McGregor is also celebrating a birthday, and that one will be on Thursday. And so the Caring Committee would like to wish each of them the happiest of birthdays and have a candle of celebration in honor of all. So let's celebrate that. And I am lighting a candle of gratitude, and it is for our choir and for Brett Carson as we continue to navigate our musical misadventures, but also for this congregation, which has been willing to try new things musically, and that has been something that has been really wonderful. And the next hymn, you may want to summon that spirit. It's from the Buddhist tradition, so it's a little different than what we're used to, but the words will help us as a musical meditation. So let's just thank our musicians and all of them, and also Kevin Shen. So thank you. I'm asking Casey to light 2 more candles, one to hold all those joys and sorrows that remain in the sanctuary of our hearts but are unexpressed by words, and the other to hold this precious planet with its needs for justice and care from all of us.
Please remain seated and join us in our meditation song from the Basket of Plums hymnal. The words to this song were written by the late Thich Nhat Hanh. It's called Compassion Springs from the Heart. Compassion springs from the heart as pure, refreshing water, healing the wounds of life, turning poison into flowers. One flower, 2 flowers, millions of little flowers appear in the fields, and weapons turn to dust. From the highest peak of the mountain, the blessed water comes streaming down, penetrating rice fields and orange groves. The healing water is the same on a willow branch in the heart. The leaves are still green, and the sunlight smiles on the snow.
Thank you. I invite you to join me in the spirit of compassion. Compassion for yourself, for those around you, for the world. And I invite you to do so by just allowing yourself to be present here for this moment. To take this moment as just an opportunity for you to be here, just as you are, just in this place, right now. I invite you to settle in, put down what's in your hands for just a moment, and just to be here to hear these words from movement activist Adrienne Marie Brown, who suggests that all of us in these times need to remember to do something in our week that reminds us to be vulnerable. It doesn't have to be something deeply intellectual or difficult. She suggests calling a friend that you miss just to tell them that you miss them. Or, if you want to be more radical, she says, you can get naked in front of your mirror and find something you love about your body. And I would suggest that there are some other things that we could do. We could dance like no one is watching, or even if some people are. We could reach out to make contact to somebody that you're not sure you're in right relationship with. You could remind someone to turn in their ballot. You could do something silly, even if you're afraid of seeming silly, even if you were reprimanded for being silly when you were younger. You can say to someone you trust, I do not know what is going on in this country, and that means I do not know some days what is going on in my own heart. And in the spirit of vulnerability, I would suggest you can vow to speak some little piece of your truth when you need to. Let us remember that in our vulnerability, we are also interdependent, held together in the great web of what it means to be a human, with all our flaws, with all our strengths, with all our joys, with all our sorrows. Together, let us take all of this into our embrace.
Thank you for that. So my name is Sharon Solstice. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. And because I'm up here to do the call for the offering, I'm going to take advantage of it to talk to you about Bid for Love. So we're doing some things a little differently this year. And basically what we're doing is going back to a model that looks more like our pre-pandemic model. And what that means is a lot of emphasis on the event itself on November 9th. Now, if you don't have that on your calendar yet, take out your phone right now, put it on your calendar. And because of that, we have a real emphasis on making this event be fun. We want it to be fun for everybody, whether you're coming to spend a lot of money, that's good. But if you're coming with nothing in your pocket, come and enjoy the company. Janice is handling our food, which means it will be wonderful. There'll be more entertainment than we've had in the past. There'll be more activities. We want this to be a community fellowship event that also happens to make some money. We're going to have a couple of guest MCs. We're also going to have Mark Chase returning to the stage as an MC, and our brand new for the first time on the stage MC will be Laura Zucker, which I think means there might be more music than we've had in the past. But we'll probably have several different people providing music. I think it's going to be a wonderful evening. And with that said, we can still use donations. We've got some terrific events and services and outings and destinations that have been offered, but we can take some more. And with that said, it's still okay if when I ask the ushers to come forward, you hit that Donate Now button or put something in the basket. The ushers will now come forward. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
Before I start, I just want to say we are grateful to have Kevin Shen working with us so that Brett can be our conductor. So I'm going to thank Kevin. And I also want to say that if this topic opens something up in you, let us always remember that we have our pastoral visitors who are here, our caring listeners, and they're always wearing the caring listener tag. We have 2 here today, and they're always here to help listen if you have something you'd like to say. We're grateful for the resources of this community. So Friday was my mother's 87th birthday. My sister got her a digital frame, which meant I spent some hours in the last couple weeks going through my first family photos. And then one night last week, my sister and I loaded the frame remotely. Me from Martinez, she was in Santa Cruz, and then we were on the phone together. And when we came across a picture of the other that we thought was particularly funny, we would text it to each other, like the time that we each had a perm. That was mine. I'm not outing her. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something. That's enough of that picture now. Thank you. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something that many of us go to great lengths to avoid, which is vulnerability. With the spirit in which I do this is clear. Can one be more vulnerable than a picture of an out-of-date hairstyle? Vulnerability is a subject that I, like Casey, know more than a little about, and it's one that I continue to learn about, and I'm grateful for those learnings, for they have allowed me to live more wholly into my life. I have learned about vulnerability through my life experience, by working with an excellent therapist, through extensive study of the science of trauma, and the Internal Revenue Service. Yes, the IRS is better than Tarot for me for predicting what year I was most vulnerable and tagging it for me. That was early 2017, right after another national election, whose results caused what Movement Generation co-activist Michelle Mascarenas calls a shock. And a combination of that shared shock and a number of years of personal loss propelled me into a level of vulnerability that broke me open. I remember submitting my 2017 taxes, they were late. I used the extended deadline, and I remember saying as I put them in the mailbox, very close to the witching hour, wow, that year was really complicated and a mess. May I not get audited that year? And truthfully, my prayers were answered. I didn't get completely audited, but I did get a lot of letters and correspondence. And in the end, though I actually got money back, I did spend 5 years in conversation with the IRS about the year 2017, constantly reminded about the year when I felt the most vulnerable, which made me relive again and again that hideous year. Brené Brown, who, as Casey said, the TED Talk on vulnerability, which she did in 2008, went viral, defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, that unstable feeling we get when we step out of our comfort zone or do something that forces us to lose control. And sometimes we're forced out of our comfort zone by the events of the world. In February of 2017, I definitely knew I was outside my league in my personal life, and the world was just a mess. The news was a constant series of jump scares. We were stunned and yet not yet numb to how hate-filled and chaotic a leader could be, And we never knew what was going to happen next. Do we remember that? 2017. Driving to work felt like being in a police state. There were more law enforcement vehicles out on the streets at every moment for no reason that I could figure out. One time in my less than 20-minute drive to work, I counted 7 law enforcement vehicles on my drive. It was not a world in which I wanted to admit that I felt vulnerable. But as the daughter of a Japanese-American immigrant, I wasn't taught to necessarily trust law enforcement, though I've come to understand it's a complex thing. I was taught to fear them. So that meant I went to work for that whole time in much fear. Brene Brown, in her talk, which has been such an important talk, it's almost a cliche. If you haven't seen it, it's worth watching, as Casey said, says that the popular myth is that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness. But her research says when we think of times that we have felt vulnerable or emotionally exposed, we are actually recalling times of great courage. And I think that now, when I think back on those years, that there was great courage, and the courage was found in many ways. And though some of us really struggled to be present, and there was a huge rise in addictive and other behaviors, it was so important for us to remember that we had resources, and that made us brave. What most of us fail to understand, Dr. Brown says, is that vulnerability is also the cradle of emotions and experiences that we crave. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. I think of 2017 as the reason that I became a pen pal with the IRS. But it was also the year that I had to admit that I needed others to understand what I was afraid of. I didn't choose this, let me be clear. It kind of was forced upon me. I had no other choice at some point. And I knew from so many conversations in the years since that I am not the only one. Writer, thinker, and activist Adrienne Marie Brown, whose words we had in our meditation, has been wrestling with the idea of vulnerability in this election, and she knows that many of us are feeling the same kinds of fear, little bits of it, and we're doing everything we can to tamp it down. Having spent much of her year working to call out the role of the Biden administration in the devastation of Gaza, she also thinks about the vulnerability of her Black kin in these times and what it would mean to live under a regime led by a plan developed by Christian nationalists and self-avowed white supremacists. And it puts her in that kind of tangle that we saw in the character from our children's story, Scribble. Brene Brown says, the thing that underpins us is excruciating vulnerability. This idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. And perhaps just to survive, we need to learn to be in touch with multiple parts of ourself. That is what Adrienne Marie Brown believes, that we have to hold the short and the long-term goals for a system that we now know is broken, a system that we know we must continue to work on even past a couple weeks from now, together with our long-term vision of where we've been and where we want to be. And this can lead to new approaches. Michelle Mascarenas says that when we have shocks, she talks about shock, slides, and shifts. Shocks, such as the election of 2016, or when we have slides, which is more of a gradual change that leaves us feeling vulnerable, such as the expansion of the fire season in California, which is matched only by the ferociousness of the hurricane season. And so many of you, when you were dropping your stones in these last couple weeks, told me whispered the name of some family member you're so glad is okay in the Southeast. But that kind of change, that's a shift. It's something that happens over time, and then all of a sudden we know that we're there. That kind of shock, that kind of shift, she says, could lead to the willingness to make change in things we do as a society. You know, I could quote you, and actually, Casey, I'll just say that I also love that Venn diagram little piece between neuroplasticity, neurodiversity, neuroresearch, and justice making, so we're going to have to talk about that more. And I could quote you a lot of data from that about how important it is for us physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually to be vulnerable, but here's the thing, we all kind of know that at this point, because we've all been here living through these years. And one of the conundrums of our time is that we feel vulnerable as a result of a bullying culture, which makes us feel even more threat to admit our vulnerabilities, right? We're in this cycle where we're really afraid to do this. But we have many reasons we might not admit that. This is what Adrienne Marie Brown says. There's a lot that keeps us all in movement, i.e. people working within a social movement, from risking vulnerability. One of the major things I'm always trying to navigate is, am I being as vulnerable as I need to be in order to keep growing as a human being and just keep learning? And am I vulnerable enough that people can experience my humanity? Many people get into movement work because they're actually directly impacted, or they're indirectly impacted, she says, but directly accountable. And almost immediately what I see is that people always say to themselves that someone else has it worse, so they're not going to talk about what's hard for them. I want to say that again because I think that's something we see in this community. That almost immediately, she says, what I see is that people always think someone else had it worse, so they're not going to talk about what's hard for them. And she goes on to say, we hit what feels like a precipice of vulnerability, and then people back off because they think there are others who have it much worse, and that that's the true thing that needs to be attended to. It never ceases me, she says, it never ceases to amaze me that the best humans are always thinking of others. But what this does to our vulnerability is that it keeps us from being able to say and do the things we need to do to bring our own needs into the room. And that does us a great disservice. This is a time when many of us are feeling vulnerable. Some of us are probably running very fast to be sure that we don't know that, but some of us know that we are. Some people experience the Groundhog Day effect of something repeating itself over and over again. 2017 was my Groundhog Day year. It haunted me letter after letter for so long, and in so many other ways as well. But it opened me up to look at other vulnerabilities in my life and to understand myself as a person, yes, who has survived multiple traumas throughout my life, starting in my earliest days, but also as a person with amazing strengths and resources. And now, when we are all kind of caught in a nightmare repeat cycle of the year that caused so many to push beyond the edge of despair, it's time for us to think consciously about vulnerability. Knowing that we are vulnerable allows us to admit what we need to take care of ourselves and find the things that we need to do as individuals and together as community. Aging, declining health, economic insecurity, there are so many things that also make us feel vulnerable in these times. Grace Lee Boggs, a Chinese-American activist who wrote this at the age of 99, we're celebrating our 90-plus birthdays today, so it's appropriate. She said, at almost 100 years old, I experience falls, new levels of pain, and difficulties moving. I also feel the need to reflect on that which has sustained me over the years. I want to emphasize the importance of philosophy to my life. As I think about this, I want to challenge people to think about this philosophically. I want people to ask themselves and each other, what time is it on the clock of the world? Sometimes when we think about that, what time is it on the clock of the world, we can feel kind of vulnerable because we know there's a lot going on. But we can also know that it's time to jump in to do the things that we feel might be risky. I want to say that next week, I will be doing something that's risky. I'll be representing the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association at a meeting outside of London for a week. And I'll be traveling there on my own, and there have been a lot of communication mishaps, and I'm not actually sure exactly how I'm getting there or who's going to meet me, but I'm going anyway. And as a trauma survivor, that isn't the easiest thing to do. And I also want to mention what a joy it's been these last month to sing in the choir, because I love to sing, and I sang quite a bit as a young person, and then I developed asthma, and I never know exactly when my voice is going to be there or not, so it's always a risk to sing. But what I appreciate about singing in a choir is that it kind of doesn't matter, because Maura's always going to be there, and Patty's always going to be there, and Carol's always going to be there, and Scott and David and all the rest. So that's the great thing about singing in a choir. I think a lot of you have probably had just about enough of this topic of vulnerability. But if you find yourself feeling vulnerable, imagine how vulnerable it feels to be a bully breed dog with a human that makes you dress like this or like this. It'll probably make you feel better, because you know we love a comparison. I just want to say I did not preach on this subject because I need you to take care of me. That's one of the great things about admitting my vulnerability. I learned how to do that myself. I preached on this subject because I want us not to lose a single person to the depths of despair in these coming weeks and months and what could be difficult years. I want us to recommit to being the place where people can find hope, where we can find compassion, where we can embrace our vulnerability and move forward with love at the center. So let's do that together, my friends.
So please rise in body or spirit and sing our closing song, Creation of Peace. The words will be on the screen. This song by Mark Miller recreates the idea of a community beyond oppression and colonialism. Suffering and those who will mourn, we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. We'll build a love where peace is reborn. Oh, come build a love, come gather together, anointed by God, then create peace where justice shall flow down like the water, and peace, peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a love where all will belong. Oh, come build a love, come gather together, anointed by God, then create peace where justice shall flow down like the water, and peace, peace like an ever-flowing stream. Hallelujah, hallelujah. like oaks of righteousness rise her people. Come build a love my people receive. Oh, come build a love, come gather together, anointed by God, then create peace, where justice shall flow down like the waters, and peace, peace like an ever-flowing stream. Hallelujah, hallelujah, peace falls down. 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 Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
We can take this collective time of breath while I transition over here to thank our choir. I'm going to invite Casey to extinguish our chalice with these words from Brené Brown. Courage, the original definition of courage, is from the Latin word meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. So let us take our stories and our willingness to embrace them in their strengths and their vulnerabilities out into this world, and let us give it to them as a gift of peace.